Welcome to the Youth Life Project Zambia. We believe in the youth because we believe in the youth. It is the reason why we want every youth to be aware out there that as a Youth Life Project Zambia, on all our platforms, all our social platforms, every Friday afternoon we will have new posts by the professionals that we identify as things or rather topics that affects the development or deter the success or the development of the youth. As a youth-led organization, it is our pride to look into the matters of the youth because we understand what affects youth.
Whether it's a result of an unexpected diagnosis or a life-changing disability, an end of a marriage or the loss of a loved one, grief can arise suddenly and it can take up residence without invitation. Although we encounter loss and grief at some point, we're not meant to walk through it alone. Today, Zelipa will be speaking to Linda Nankamba about her journey through her unexpected and devastating tragedies. Listen to our Ubumi podcast today as we go through how Linda dealt with her grief and loss of a loved one. Hi, Linda. You're welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Linda is a fourth-year student studying economics at UNZA. Today, Linda, I'd like to find out from you. In your experience as you were dealing with the loss of the loved one, as you felt your pain, did you just say, I'm going to ignore it and it will go away?
No, it doesn't work that way for me. I'm a very emotional person, to just to put it out. So saying I'll ignore it and then it will go away doesn't really work for me as an individual. It might work for some other people. And I wouldn't really call it ignoring it, but maybe just keeping yourself busy and out of the thought of the tragedy that has happened. But personally, I don't ignore it. I don't even keep myself busy. It's hard to keep myself busy. Mostly what I do is just allow myself to grieve, allow myself to think about it, just let it out. If there's someone that I have to talk to about it, just find that particular person, just bring it out. If I have to cry, just cry it out and everything that you have to do to let it out. Just getting to heal, and when it's completely out, then I'll be okay.
Okay, Linda, please let us know, before we go any further, please let us know, who have you lost?
A lot. I've lost a lot of people. To begin with, my own father. I've lost my biological father. I lost him when I was 15. I've lost my grandparents. I think that was the very first biggest loss I encountered. My grandparents, my grandfather and grandmother from my mother's side. I've lost a brother, a big brother. I would call him a cousin, but we stayed with him like practically my entire life. So he was a brother to me. I've lost, and just recently I lost my teacher, my primary school teacher, and it was really bad.
Oh, okay. I know loss and grief is the biggest challenge in our life. Mm-hmm. It may be difficult. Every one of us deals with it in a different way. Mm-hmm. Some of us get shocked. Some of us feel like we don't want to eat. We don't even want to think straight. Did you ever feel like that when you were coping with your grief?
Yes, at different points. Like I said, I've lost a lot of people that were really close to me. And that's a very good question because I went through different experiences with the different tragedies. I remember for my father, I was quite young and excited. He died the time I just received my grade 9 results. So I was very happy. They didn't even tell me about it. So the time I got to hear about it, and I was young, I cried. Like the same instant they told me, I cried. I was very emotional. Cried. They told me in the night. In the morning when I woke up, I was back happy, playing and everything. And then when you look at the recent time that I lost my teacher, I cried for about 2 weeks. I couldn't stop crying because maybe I was big and I just don't know what was going on with me. I couldn't eat sometimes. I didn't want to be alone. When I find myself alone, I'd be very sad, very unhappy and all that. So I've experienced it in different ways with different people.
Is it important to be strong when you're facing a loss?
Yes, I think it is. Because some people may not have someone to be strong for them. So all you need to do is to be strong for yourself. I know.
But how do you do that?
Yeah, it's hard. Like I put it, I'm a very emotional person, so I'm not very strong when it comes to loss and grief. But if you can be strong, if you can be there for yourself, if you can be there for someone, then it's best to do it. I think the best way to be strong is to realize that the person that you had lost did their best, and if they had a choice, they would still want, they would still want to be there with you.
Did you ever get help from some, there's a place like Chainama or the Psychological Association of some. Do you ever approach such people to say, this is what I'm going through and I need help?
No, not really. Mostly it's just friends. And my mother, I'm a Christian, so my mother expects me to be very, with Christian belief, where you lose someone and then you're not so sad about it because you're going to see them again. So every time I get so emotional, my mother will be like, Linda, you're a Christian, you pray, you're not supposed to react like this. She'll be out there trying to control me, to comfort me and make me feel better about it, reminding me of my Christian values. And friends, of course, there are people that would understand you and know what you're going through even before you speak. I remember the one that I lost my teacher. I didn't even have to tell someone that I was going through this. I wasn't eating. I didn't want to be alone. I was so scared and whatnot. But I sent my friend a voice note. We were chatting and then I sent him a voice note. And then he was able to tell from the tone of my voice to say, you don't sound okay. Like, is everything okay? And then we got to talk about it. I didn't even realize it was so intense myself because it was just like loss of appetite. You're feeling bad. You can't just, everything is just not right, until he made me realize and understand that what you're going through is actually a very big thing. And if you're not careful, it might even lead you into depression. So mostly it's just friends and family.
I remember when I had my third pregnancy, I miscarried. Okay. When I lost the baby, I felt like I've lost a part of myself, it's gone.
Yeah.
And then you just sit and wonder, why is this happening? What did I do wrong for me to go through this? Have you ever felt like that, where you're telling yourself, I could have done better, I could have spent more time with this person? You're now regretting.
Yes. The time I lost my father, he was unwell for a long time, so he couldn't speak. And then the time I lost my teacher, he was unwell but he could speak, so would talk almost every time. It was just during this, it was in June, this year, June. So would speak almost all the time. We were on vacation that time, so I was home in Chipata, and then would always talk about how I should visit him. He was in St. Francis Hospital. Would always talk about how I should go and visit him, and then my mother would be like, no, there's corona, movements are restricted and whatnot. So the time that I learned that he had died, to just shortly before we opened school, and I was getting, like the past week, I was talking to my mother about it, to say, Mommy, school is opening soon and I have to head back to Lusaka. What do you think? I should just go and visit him, even if it's risky. I should just go to the hospital. I know they might not allow me, but even just through a window, I just get to see him and just tell him that I'm going back to school. I couldn't go home to see him. So the time I heard that he had died, it was about 2 days before we opened school. The time I heard that he had died, I was really sad. I felt like it was my fault that I didn't go out there to face the risk of coronavirus to go and see him. I blamed myself for the times that maybe I didn't get to speak to him. We would talk so oftenly on the phone. But there are times when I couldn't. Maybe I have airtime, but I get to talk to some other people and waste it like that. I felt like I was wasting because I wasn't spending it talking to him. And the fact that I didn't get the chance to go and see him, even after making a lot of arrangements and promises, made me really feel bad. I regretted. I felt like it was my fault.
In 1969, a psychiatrist called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross introduced what is known as the 5 stages of grief. The first one is denial, the second one is anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Do you think as you were dealing with your grief, you would ask yourself, this can't be happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Who is to blame? You would tell yourself in your mind and say, make this not happen and I'll become a better person. I'm always sad to do anything because I've lost a loved one. I'm at peace with what has happened. Do you ever ask yourself such questions?
Yes, a lot. Firstly, it's hard for me to believe, for example, talking about a loss of a loved one. Mostly what touches me is the fact that they were here 1 minute and then the next minute they're gone. So I'll be in denial to say, is this really happening? Like, have they really gone? Like, why so suddenly? Like, couldn't they do something about it to stay a little longer? You find that this is someone who is very strong, very powerful, because we're so powerless when it comes to death. So someone is so strong and powerful, but then they failed to preserve their own life. And you're like, Like how? Like just like that, they're gone, they were here and then they're gone. So yes, I have been in denial. I've gotten to a point of asking like, why now? The time I lost my father, I had just made it to grade 10. And all this while, my mother is the one that had been sponsoring me to school. And then my father had promised to say when she makes it to grade 10, I will take over and whatnot. So the time he died, just at the point of my breakthrough, I asked like, why now? Like all this while, like God, why now? Like why did it have to happen now? So yes, I agree. I think I go through all those stages of grief to get to a point where you finally accept and heal, to say, no, this person has gone, let's move on, life has to go on.
So in what you've gone through, in your experience, have you come across someone who's grieving as you're studying at university, who you think you've helped?
Let me think about it. Someone who is grieving, whom I think I've helped. I don't remember any.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as you interact with people at school, the students you're with, I'm sure you're able to pick from another person to say, this person is going through something. Let me talk to them and ask them, maybe this is what they're going through.
Yes. I have faced scenarios where a friend, maybe it's because not really a loss, but then they're grieving because of maybe academics. Yes. So I'm one person who believes just because you're down today doesn't mean you'll be down forever. And for some of us, maybe failure is good because it makes us push harder. I have failed most of my great achievements have come before failure. I did well at some point because the previous moment I didn't do so well, so I knew I had to push harder. So I've faced scenarios where my friends are grieving because of maybe academics. So I get to talk to them, to tell them, no, this is supposed to be a stepping stone. This is not going to stay like this forever unless you decide to keep it that way. So I encourage them to say, no, the fact that it's like this now, if you are not happy about it and you want to make change, let's do this and upgrade to the next level.
Okay. Sometimes you're not able to cry as you face the loss. You're not able to let out those tears. Is it okay not to cry when you've lost someone?
I think it's okay. I think people grieve differently. Some people cry. I cry a lot. And then some people will be sad, but then it doesn't come out to everyone. Like they're just holding it to themselves. And that's okay. Not that they're depressed or that it's going to have adverse effects on them, but that's just how they do it. So depending on how you do it, if you have to cry when you face the loss and you're grieving, then do it. Don't hold it back. And if your own way of dealing with grief is not crying, like you just process it in your head to try and understand and heal just within yourself, then that's okay. The end point is healing and moving out of that process of grief. So however you do it, that's okay.
I know in our culture, we tend to have a funeral for our loved ones. That's how we send them off. But once those people that have come to help you bury that person go, how easy is it to cope with not seeing that person that was there for you every day?
Yeah, that's really hard and very practical. When you lose when you lose someone at home, the funeral house is your place, and then everyone that had come to grieve with you goes. It becomes like everything becomes like plain and empty. You feel empty. That's when you feel the absence of the person that you've lost. So I think the best way of trying to move out of that zone is to try and be around other people. Of course, you're not going to be left alone at home, because some people will stick around with you and then they may be gone, but just make sure that the time that they're still around, you interact with them as much as possible. Let out everything that you were still holding back, everything, like just feel all the emotions. Try and move out of that zone as those people are around. Talk to them, get to interact with them, have happy moments with them, just getting to get you to forget about the person. Of course, you won't forget, but just to heal from the loss of the person.
Of late, I've realized in my own capacity, if I've got an issue that's bothering me, I'd rather exercise. It does help my brain mentally to stop thinking about that thing that's bothering me. Do you think that if you keep yourself busy, you'd forget that you have that grieving thing in you?
Yes, you would. And then some people would argue to say, no, I'll forget for a moment. The moment I get back to being alone, it comes back. But keeping yourself busy is very important, because in the process, you eventually get to a point where even when you're alone, you won't be feeling the loneliness, you won't be feeling the grief, you would have healed from it. You say you exercise. That's a very good thing. Personally, when I'm grieving, I don't like to be alone. My brain goes through a lot of things, a lot of thinking and whatnot. So when I'm sad, when I'm grieving, I'd rather be in a company of people, like the company that I enjoy, be with people around me, where I know I'm going to be happy, I'm going to laugh my emotions out and whatnot.
So for how long did you grieve for your father?
My father. The moment, like I said, I was about to go into Britain. So the moment he died, I cried, and then the next day I was happy. But then it would hit me later because I went into boarding school. So and that was the first time I was going into boarding school, because grade 8 and 9 I was at a day school. So the time I got into boarding school, and then you'd see people being visited by their fathers, you'd see people talk about their fathers, telling their stories about home and how their fathers are there for them and whatnot. And it always come back to me. I remember the first time I would still be in bed and cry because my father is not there. Because when I think back home, where I'm coming from a funeral where we're just burying my father and whatnot. And then I'll just think to say, when I go back, I won't find him, and it's just hard. So it took me quite a while, but it wasn't instant, like feeling everything together, like it would come and go.
You've been listening to Zelipa Zimba on my Ubumi podcast today. I've been talking to Linda from UNZA, who's a fourth-year student studying economics. She's just told us of how she's coped with her grief on the loved ones that she lost. We know that while grieving is part of life, there's always ways to cope with the pain, comes to terms with the grief, and eventually find a way to pick up pieces and move on with your life. Sometimes it's important to acknowledge your pain when you're grieving. Accept that grief can trigger many different and unexpected emotions. Understand that your grieving process will be unique to you. Seek out face-to-face support from people who care about you. Support yourself emotionally by taking care of yourself physically. Recognize the difference between grief and depression. Linda, thank you very much for coming today. We hope to have you again on a different topic.
All right, thank you. It was good to be here.
Thank you. Listen in to our Ubumi podcast on our Facebook page. And also, if you're looking for resources in order to help you deal with grief and loss, please do visit Bridge Therapy Center on their Facebook page and Great North Rehab Center in Lusaka, as well as Chainama Hospital. This has been Zelipa Zimba bringing to you my podcast on loss and grief.